All right, everyone. The Trump administration was trying to prevent inmates within prisons from getting hormone replacement therapy. A federal judge, link in the description, archived of course, has just decided that this is against the law. Again, another unilateral decision. We've seen literally hundreds of them over the last 100 or so days. Another unilateral decision that blatantly violates the separation of powers, number one, and is blatantly unpragmatic and unhelpful, number two. Now, I've had my own dealings with the so-called justice system, so I'm not unamenable to the concept that jails and prisons and so forth are, you know, run improperly in some cases. There is corruption within the so-called justice system, but this is the highest level of corruption that you can get when you get a judge that acts unilaterally blocking a decision to deny inmates something that is taxpayer funded and serves no legitimate medical purpose. And that's really what's happening. The problem is this. There are cases in which people have gender dysphoria. And I have no problem with transgendered individuals. I couldn't care less. As long as you leave the kids alone, because some people are using it as an excuse to perv. Other than that, no problems. That's fine. Dress the way you want. If you want to take estrogen or testosterone or something like that, if you want to have bottom surgery, that's okay. I literally don't care. That being said, though, why should my tax money be going to such a service when it is very, very likely to be misused? It's the same thing as transgenderism in general. This is what I spoke about almost a decade ago. I said, my problem is not with people that have dysphoria. My problem is with people who will use the same condition as an excuse to pervert on other people. And the same is true in this instance. Imagine, as you will, a person goes into the prison system. They are an inmate now. They've been convicted of some sort of crime. They are biologically male. But they say, well, you have to transfer me to the women's prison and give me estrogen because, I'm transgender. Apparently, there is nothing that the legal system is willing to do to stop this from happening, despite the fact that it's ripe for abuse. And this has happened over and over and over again. It happens in sports, for example. Men tend to be more physically acute than women. And so a man will simply say, well, I feel female in my body. I'm basically a girl. So you have to give me chems, and then I'm going to compete in women's sports. And so all of a sudden, somebody who's ranked 5,000th in weightlifting, all of a sudden is number one within the league or something like that. This is literally happening as we speak. The world has gone crazy at some point. I am not a moralist. I'm not conservative in my moral views. But come on, I mean, you've gone brain dead at some point if you're supporting this. I think it's crazy that my tax money should be going to supply, mainly for men, estrogen to people that are incarcerated. I think that that's insane. And again, I say this fully knowing the corruption and devolution of our so-called justice system within the United States, especially with regards to the conditions in some of the prisons and jails in the United States as well. With that full knowledge, though, I think that maybe my tax money should be used to pay for seasoning in food in jails as opposed to this, because that benefits everyone. Hey, you learned how to use salt. Well, that's a massive improvement. Might improve morale and prevent prison riots and stuff like that. Instead, they're pretending that any Johnny-come-lately who may not have lived a so-called trans life before at all, goes to jail or goes to prison and simply says, hey, you have no choice but to allow me to take estrogen pills. You don't have a choice anymore because the federal judge said so. This is ridiculous. This is clown world sort of stuff at this point. It's beyond moralism as far as objection goes. It's more like, hey, the government is stealing my money and utilizing it to allow people who are, considerably fucked up, I suppose, in many cases. I think it's most cases at this point, to transgender themselves without getting bottom surgery, of course, because, then they can go to the woman's prison, they'll have boobs, but they still have a dick. So I'm sure they'll be very popular. It seems like prisons are becoming basically nothing more than an orgy at this point, which concerns me considerably. We've already had plenty of cases of inmates, doing things to the guards and shit like that. Imagine what happens when a dude, somebody with a dick and a Y chromosome gets into the women's prison. I have a feeling that that's not going to be necessarily the best thing in the world. I have a feeling that somebody is definitely becoming the cell block hooker. What if a girl starts taking some testosterone and goes into the male prison because she just wants to get laid over and over? Well, she's going to have a happy time in prison because I guarantee there'll be a lot of takers. And we're not even talking about bottom surgery or anything like that. We're simply talking about taking testosterone and estrogen, hormone replacement therapy, effectively. There are some people genuinely with gender dysphoria. I feel sorry for them. But when you have these blanket rules in place, you're also talking about 90% of the time people who do not have gender dysphoria. You're talking about people who are perfectly straight, yeah, perfect. They're heteronormative, and they're simply trying to game the system. What's going to happen? Well, you're gonna have a lot of pregnancies in the women's prison. Well, that's for one. You're gonna have some hookers in the men's prison. That's for sure as well. And by the way, that doesn't get enough attention. I'm sure that their commissary will be loaded up. They might be a little bit on the muscular side, but there's some dudes that are into that and shit. Um, that's what's happening right now. We're literally ignoring basic biological reality, and we're allowing the judiciary to determine what is biological reality. Well, I don't think that some random judge, they don't have a degree in science. They don't necessarily understand anything about biology, but all of a sudden they say, well, Donald Trump is not allowed to limit hormone replacement therapy in the prisons. Why should I be paying for this? Is there a pragmatic reason? No. In many cases, is there a biological reason? Because again, I sympathize with people who have gender dysphoria, genuinely speaking. But is it pragmatic? No, absolutely not. So why are we doing this? This shouldn't even be a debate. It shouldn't even be an argument. It should be self-evident that this should not be happening. That's about all. Peace out.